Good evening, folks. Welcome to another episode of Andrew's Life. I hope everybody's doing great so far. I hope the start of your weekend is going good so far. And yes, you read the title of the video right. Do I want to stay in Alabama? I think that's how I'm going to title the video. I haven't figured it out yet. It's going to be something like that. Well, do I want to stay in Alabama? Well, to answer that question, yes and no. At this point, I am on the fence about whether or rather not I want to stay in Alabama. Why am I on the fence about wanting to stay in Alabama? Well, there's a few reasons for that, and none of these reasons are in any particular order. And before I go on and explain why I may not want to stay in Alabama, I'm not saying that Alabama is a bad place to live. For those of you that are still wanting to move to Alabama, I still encourage you to come down here and check it out and do your due diligence. And if you like it, go ahead and move down here. And there's been a lot of people that have moved here to Alabama from out of state that love it here, and they would have it no other way. So what I'm getting ready to say is no diss against Alabama by any means. I don't hate Alabama, so let's get that right. Let's get that straight as well. I do not hate Alabama. But the reason why that I'm thinking about leaving Alabama is, well, for starters, a few weeks ago, I had a job down here and I walked off that job. If you want to know more about that situation, I got a video talking about that situation that's on this channel. But I would say about 3 weeks ago, I walked off my job because there's a bunch of craziness going on. And ever since I walked off that job, I mean, obviously I've been working on this channel, and I've also been thinking of other ways to earn an income because I like to have multiple streams of income. And yes, I have been looking for work down here. And I have not found anything down here because the jobs that I have came across down here have paid that the pay is extremely low. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with the wages in many parts of the deep south, the wages down here are atrocious. I've made videos telling you guys that before, so but yeah, the wages down here are atrocious. Like, I was looking for like a custodial job down here. Because that's the kind of work that I want to do. I know for some of you that sounds kind of funny, that sounds weird. Every other person that's coming up on YouTube, they're talking about six figures and they want to level up and do all that other type of stuff. I I want to do custodial work. I've always liked doing custodial work. 'Cause I figure with the money I make doing that line of work, and then my YouTube channel, and then my other money earning endeavors, for me, I would make enough money to where I would be able to pay all my bills. Plus, I would have enough money to put in my retirement, and I would have a little bit of money to blow on whatever. Because my overhead is very low because back when I was younger, I did work some of the more labor intensive jobs that paid a lot better. And I took the bulk of that money and I utilized it wisely. So now when it comes to working a 9 to 5, I'm not really trying to do anything super physical. Now I know custodial work is physical, but it's not as physical as some of the other work I've done in the past. It's a lot easier than working in the oil field. It's a lot easier than working at some factory. But when I look at the pay for many of the jobs down here, I mean, even if I wanted to go back and do factory work here in Alabama, even in many of your Alabama cities, you'll be lucky to make $15 an hour working at a factory or working at a warehouse. Now there are certain places to where yeah you can make an upwards of 18 an hour, but from the jobs that I've seen that were available, you would be looking to make 15. And up in Indiana, where I used to live, the wages are considerably better than what they are here in Alabama. So, so one reason why I would consider leaving Alabama and go back up to Indiana is because up in Indiana, your wages are better. Now, I do realize up in Indiana, your cost of living is going to be a little higher. I do realize that, but for me, for what I'm wanting to do with my future, I'm beginning to think that Indiana would be better suited for my purposes than staying here in Alabama. Because like up in Indiana, since the economy up in Indiana is larger, there'll be more job choices. The pay will be better, and I just feel I'll have more of a I'll just have more free range of what I can do in terms of work up in Indiana compared to here in Alabama. And another reason why I'm on the fence about whether or rather not I'm going to stay in Alabama is because, well, when it comes to the people here in Alabama, I find people up in Indiana a lot more welcoming. I'm gonna just tell y'all straight up. Now a lot of people talk about Southern hospitality in Alabama. You know, I've said this before and I'll say it again, but down here I do not notice it at all. I mean, I find people up in Indiana more welcoming than people down here. I'm gonna say it straight up. Now, what do I mean by that? Here's what I mean. Now, in every, and I mean in every single community I ever lived in Indiana, no matter whether the community was integrated or the community was predominantly white, typically I was always able to find at least a couple of people within the community to where I would talk to on a regular basis. Or if something came up and I needed some and if something came up and I needed a favor done, I know that I can knock on their door or I can give them a little phone call and they'll be there for me. And of course, if they need something, I'm there for them. Now, here in Alabama, I don't have that. I mean, and I'm not saying this and I'm not saying this is going to be the same for every person. I'm just talking from my personal experience, so just bear that in mind. But so far, for the couple of years I've been here in Alabama, my personal experience here in Alabama has been I find it much harder to meet people and create meaningful relationships down here compared to living back up in Indiana. Like the neighborhood where I live right now, yes, it's quiet. Yes, it's safe. And I appreciate that. And all that means a lot to me. However, the entire time that I've lived here, I have not had not a single one of my neighbors come up to me at any time and welcome me to the community. Now I know for some of you, you're probably thinking, okay, well, who cares? What's the big deal? You're being petty. Okay, maybe I am being petty, but after living up in Indiana, to where everywhere I ever lived, I've always had people welcome me into the community. I've always had a couple of people that I became friends with, so to speak. after living for after living up in Tennessee for about 5 years. Again, I lived in Nashville, I lived in Hendersonville, and I lived in Lewisburg. And even when I was up in Nashville and Hendersonville, again, whenever I moved somewhere, people always welcomed me to the community. And I have always been able to stay in regular contact with a couple of people within the community. I mean, Alabama is the very first place I've moved to where one, people never welcomed me to the community. B, I have yet to been able to make any friends down here, to create any meaningful connections down here. And while some of you might think I'm being petty, and again, maybe I am, I personally find it a little odd. I find it a little strange. Like with all the crazy shit that's going on today, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you people. It kind of makes me feel a little bit uneasy. And maybe I'm thinking too hard on this stuff, but that's just what I'm thinking at this particular moment. And that's what I've been thinking for a while. I mean, when I first came back down here from Indiana a couple of months ago, I mean, at that time, I thought, okay, Alabama is where I want to be. I mean, I like the climate down here. I like my house. I like my lot. I like the proximity to the beaches. But after being back down here for a couple of months, I'm beginning to have a change of, I guess you could say I'm beginning to have a change of heart. Like some of the things that I thought was important a couple of months ago, I mean, yeah, they're nice to have, but they're not as important as what I thought they were. And another reason why I'm contemplating on leaving Alabama is because, well, uh, one thing I noticed down here is when it comes to many of your contractors, like when I was living up in Indiana, even in the small towns, if I needed a contractor to come to my house and do anything, typically they would be at my house within a couple of days. Here in Alabama, you might not, you'll be lucky to see somebody in 2 weeks. And another thing I notice here is if you don't call and confirm and stay on top of your appointment the day where they're supposed to come and do what they're supposed to do for you, that day will come and go and they will not show up. And then when you call and you ask, hey man, what's the deal? Where you at? Either A, they'll admit to the fact that they forgot, or B, they'll act like they they'll act like you didn't even call. And I'm gonna give you a couple of examples of that. Now, last week I was supposed to have pest control come to my house and treat my house for bugs and also check my house for termites. Now, the pest control company that I'm using, they have a crew that will come and spray your house. They'll have a person that will come and treat your house for pests, and then they'll have another person that will come and do termite inspection. Well, the person who was supposed to treat my house for pests, that got done. However, the person who was supposed to treat my house with termites, they were supposed to show up on that same day, but they never showed up. And then when I called, they act like they never had me on their schedule, which I know they had me on the schedule because I wrote it down. So basically I had to sit around and wait for a week for them to come back to check for termites. So that's one example of some of these contractors out here, which I find frustrating. Another example is now the other day I put up a post and I showed you guys my new electric panel that I had installed. Before I had the old school glass fuses. So I got that swiped out and now I got the circuit breakers. Now there was another company that I called and I told them to come out and do all that. And the company that I was going to use, I've called them initially. Back I called them back in October of 2023. Uh, do you guys realize that as of 2 weeks ago, that company gave me a call? And I'm thinking, okay, well, I guess they're free to come to my house and switch out and update my box. Well, they called, and the first question I asked the person who was on the phone was, so when are you guys coming to my house to update my box? The lady told me, well, we're just making sure that you still need us to come out. And now at this time I told her, yes, I need you to come out. And then I asked her, when you coming out? And she's like, well, I can't give you a date. We're still busy, and she gave me a whole bunch of other bullshit. So I was like, okay. And then I hung up. And then finally, I decided to call somebody else who charges a little bit more money. But at this point, I didn't care. I was willing to pay that extra money. So I called somebody else. And they came out. They came out like 2 days after I called, and they got me updated, which I appreciate. But I also had to pay considerably more money to those people compared to what I would have had to pay to the other people. Now, the main reason why I chose to update my electric box was because in the event that I decided to sell this house, that will have already been done. Because for those of you that don't know this, a bank will not finance a house unless your house has the up to date circuit breakers. So if you're looking to purchase a house that has the old school glass fuses and you're going through a bank or a mortgage company, they will not mortgage your house. Just so you guys know that. So just to make it easier for me to sell this house if I chose to go that route, that's the reason why I decided to update my electric box. So basically, all the way from the piss poor wages here in Alabama to the fact that I find it much harder to meet people and create meaningful connections, to some of the contractors out here that either downright suck or it takes them forever in a lifetime to come out and do some work for you. Those are some of the biggest reasons why I'm thinking about selling my house here in Alabama and going back up to Indiana. And I'm not gonna lie, there's certain things I miss about Indiana. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, do I miss the winters? No. But there's a lot of other things about Indiana that I do miss. And of course, I grew up in Elyria, Ohio, which is a half hour west of Cleveland, and all my family are still up in northern Ohio. So if I moved up to Indiana, I would be a lot closer to where I can just jump in my car and drive a few hours and visit all my family. So that's another thing I've been thinking about as well. So As these last couple of months, I've really been thinking hard about staying down here or going back up north. And some of the things that I've always, well, not always, but some of the things that I thought was important, such as warm weather, proximity to beaches, and large lots. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still like all that, I still enjoy all that, but there's a part of me that's starting to think, yeah, I enjoy that, but is it really all that important? Is it really as important as I think it is? I question that. And again, I do not hate Alabama. I mean, I wish I could go out here and meet somebody and build a meaningful connection. I mean, I wish things in that department were a little better. I mean, but at this point, no, I do not hate Alabama. So let's get that straight. And I could probably add a couple of things to this, but we're already 21 and a half minutes in. So I'm going to stop it right here. Hopefully, you guys got something out of it. Hopefully, if you didn't get nothing meaningful out of it, hopefully it was entertainment value. So on that note, everybody stay blessed, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.